I think what I'm going to do is just start with this hole here, just to give you a little demonstration of how to darn a hole in a sweater. And so I like to work on the outside, the right side, just to see the way that it's looking as I'm doing it. I know that sometimes people like to darn from the inside, but if you can see here, what I'm attempting to do is to go under, over, in between each of the V knit stitches, and it'll become a little more clear as I pull it through here. And so a knit stitch is a V shape, or I like to call it a heart shape. And inside of that V is a bar. And for this particular method of darning, I like to weave alternating over, under each stitch, going up a row. And so I've chosen, with this particular hole, it doesn't feel like it's the area too far beyond the hole is very damaged, so I feel okay about starting on the row just to the outside, like just the one row to the outside of the hole. If you notice that the fabric is weak, you might want to go a little beyond that, maybe a row or two beyond. That's just kind of where experience comes into play, or, I mean, everything is different, so you really just have to kind of make your best guess. Never hurts to go beyond beyond the hole too much. It's a little extra stability. Okay, so here, this is kind of an interesting seam here on the shoulder, so I'm just kind of going in between the two layers of fabric here, and to start coming back the other direction. And so now I've come to a point where there is not a knit stitch, so this is my hole. And so I'm going to find the point on the other side of the hole where I can grab some one of the bars and just continue this alternating over, under, over, under. Hope that y'all can see this. All right, and so I'm going to continue to do this every row, basically, and trying to alternate from the previous row if I can. Okay, so I've come up and created my third row, and you want to be careful not to pull too tight on those turns because the yarn will pull. So you want to give it a little bit of extra there on the turn so that it doesn't pull the fabric too much. All right, so here I'm going to go up. I'm actually going to go up a little bit more because the damage goes up a little higher on this particular section. All right, and now we're coming back down. Again, no fabric here, but with this particular hole, I can see it's a pretty clean edge. Some holes are not this clean, so that's another reason why I feel like this is a good demo piece, just because the hole is pretty clean around the edges. Okay, so, and if any of you are familiar with weaving, I'm basically creating my warp here. I'm going to be weaving over, under, over, under. Once I complete this part, I'm going to be going the other direction. Okay, so here again, I want to make sure that there's a little extra. When I pull too tight. Okay. Coming back down. And I don't think I mentioned this, the type of needle that I'm using, um, it's a pretty blunt, it's actually a really blunt needle. I don't want something too sharp because it could snag while I'm stitching. This yarn is real smooth, and so I want to be able to just kind of move through the stitches in a very smooth way. I don't want to cause more damage with a sharp needle, and it just would end up getting stuck. Also, having a large eye on the needle is important to get the yarn through. I hate fussing with a small eye on a needle. It drives me bananas. And sometimes it needs to be small if it's a fine material, but knits, I usually like to use a pretty large needle. It's something large enough that's not going to stretch out the material too much, but allows you to kind of glide smoothly through it. All right, I think I've got just one or two more rows of this part, and then we get to go into the stitches going side to side, which, if you're familiar with weaving, would be like your weft. Now, there are other ways to repair knits. Sometimes I do actually go in and recreate the stitches. Really, it's just a matter of preference. Sometimes time. It definitely takes a lot longer to try to go in and recreate knit stitches, because I end up doing it one at a time, and it can take a while. And if it's a really tiny knit, it hurts my eyes. Alright, almost there. And then the yarn I'm using is actually a sock weight yarn that I had in my stash. It's a little thicker than I normally use for darning. A lot of times I use a much thinner yarn, but it really, again, it just depends on preference, what you want the finished darn to look like. If I wanted it to be invisible or less visible, I should say, I would definitely choose a thinner yarn. Alright, so I think this is going to be the last time that I go back this way. So it all feels to be pretty secure. Okay, so it looks like I actually skipped this row right here, so I'm going to go back up one more time and do this row in between. I'm not sure if you can all see that. And that way I'm going to end up at the top where I'm going to start doing, start going the other direction. Okay, so sometimes this is where I might switch colors if I want a contrast, but for this particular sweater I'm going to keep the same color. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just coming back down as if I were going to create another line down this way, but now I'm going to switch directions. And so what I want to do here, back to the weaving reference, is go over, under as much as possible. And you can see that center part, I'm really just working with the darning yarn. When I get to the edges, I'm weaving into the sweater also. Okay, and then I just do the same thing. Coming back the other direction, I want to make sure I don't pull it too tight. Keep that tension nice and easy. And we're going to alternate again. Over, under. And this is just a plain weave. You could certainly get more fancy with this if you'd like, and do a different weaving pattern. I like things simple. And it probably wouldn't show up too much on this very small hole, but with a larger hole you could definitely get some different patterning in there if you wanted. Sometimes just changing color really makes a big difference. Alright, going back the other direction again. Again, it's just over, under, over, under. If I'm at a section where I'm working on the sweater, or I'm working back into the sweater, I want to make sure I pick up the yarn on the sweater and the yarn that I'm darning with. And going back the other way again. So there's a good example of picking up both, oops, backwards, picking up both the darning yarn and the sweater yarn on that pass. This is another reason why a blunt needle is important. If you had a sharp one, you could split your yarn really easily. Just frustrating. All right, almost there. Now this part, I've pretty much finished the hole. This is kind of catching the edge of it. It's getting a little thicker. I'm going to go back maybe one or two more times just to make sure I cover that whole edge. yarn came off the needle. Okay. Okay, I think I've got the hole totally covered. I'm going to make one more pass, and then we're going to go in and bury those ends on the inside, and this will be finished. This hole will be finished. I've got lots more to do. But I hope this is helpful. It's really an easy process. It's just a matter of patience, having materials that are appropriate. And I mean, you can't really mess up. You know, there's already a hole there. It's already damaged, so there's not a whole lot you can do to mess it up. Anything is going to be an improvement for sure, right? And now I feel like I've gotten this pretty well covered. So what I'm going to do is bring my yarn to the inside of the sweater. So there's that end, and I'm going to trim it because it's super long. And here's the other end. And this part, I have seen people who don't really weave their ends in at all. I've seen ends that are woven in so well that you can't even tell where they are. And again, this part, it just depends on your preference. Of course, we want it to stay intact, so I always like to just kind of reverse and bury those ends in just around a few stitches. If with this particular sweater, what I could do is actually come up into this. This is a nice thick, a double seam, so if I want to be like really, really good and really hide it, I'm going to bury it in the inside of that seam. Be careful not to cut my sweater. And there it is. In there, you can't see it. So sometimes if you're on a seam, you can do that, or on the edge, or at the collar. I'm going to do the same thing here. And I'm just, picking up. It's not really a rhyme or reason. I'm trying to pick up some on the back here that you're not going to see on the front, but again, that really doesn't matter because it will just look like part of the weaving, part of the darning. I'm just trying to fix it. I pulled it a little too tight, so I'm just trying to fix that tension a little bit. And I'm just going to bury it up in here again. Nice and hidden. Oh, actually I don't like the way that looks. Didn't go in there enough. But now you can see it from the inside. It looks a lot like the other side. But you'll notice, I'll see if I can get this closer here in just a second. These are my favorite little snippers. They're so small and sharp. You can get really close to the fabric. But if we can get closer here, you can see the weaving pattern there, and some of those broken yarns here, the kind of rougher edges are all on the inside. They've all been kind of push down to the inside. And the front is nice and smooth. Sorry, I'm trying to get it close. Now, if this were in an area where I was trying to make sure that you couldn't see through, I might have done it a little tighter in through here, but you can't see through there, and it's on the neck shoulder. So, all right, so that's just a simple sweater darn. I used wool thread, wool yarn, sock yarn, and yeah, if anybody has questions, let me know. Let me know if this is helpful. If you're totally confused, I don't know. I've never made one of these videos before. All right, I hope that helps. I'm gonna move on to the next ones.